Welcome to Khanversations. I'm Muqtedar Khan. I'm a professor at the University of Delaware and I'm the host of Khanversations. Today we are going to talk about Turkey, one of the most important Muslim countries and one of the great rising powers in the world. We're going to talk about the current political crisis in Turkey. We're going to talk about the evolution and transformation of Turkish foreign policy under President Erdogan, and we will also talk about the future of Erdogan. And to help us understand all of this, we have with us one of the most prominent scholars of Turkey in the United States, Professor Hakan Yavuz. He teaches at the University of Utah. His two recent books, which have garnered a lot of attention, one of them is called Nostalgia for the Empire. He tries to capture the political culture of Turkey today as to how it sees itself and how it sees its role in the world. And he also wrote a book which attracted a lot of attention called Erdogan, the Making of an Autocrat. But before we go any further, I would like all of you to subscribe to Khanversations if you have not subscribed. Do like this video and share it with your colleagues. And if you have some issues that you would love to discuss with us, please mention them in the comments. But before that, I want to share something very personal. I have lost a very dear friend, Muhyiddin Hassan Farooqui. He was my classmate in engineering college. We were great friends for 4 years. I remember we were playing a cricket match in which we had to take one wicket to win the tournament. And I remember bowling the ball to a very prominent and extraordinarily good batsman at our university. And Farooqui took that catch and we won that match. That is a memory of Farooqui that I share. We went to Kashmir together. He helped me move from Washington, D.C. to Michigan when I got my first job as assistant professor at Adrian College. In 1997, when my father had a bypass, he was with me in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. And during the COVID, the last 1.5 years has been so difficult, I felt as if I was under house arrest, unable to go anywhere. I spent hours, practically 2 or 3 times a week, talking to Farooqui on the phone, reminiscing about the past. He was a wonderful friend. We all loved him. He died young and he will be missed. May you rest in peace, Muhyiddin Hassan Farooqui. So dear friends, now let's talk about Turkey with Hakan Yavuz. Welcome to Khanversations, Hakan.
Thank you, Muqtedar. Thanks for your invitation.
Before we dive into discussing the domestic politics and foreign policy of Turkey, can you explain to us why the name change? What magical things are going to happen now that Turkey is officially called Turkey? Is this just symbolic politics, or is there a critical value or symbolic value that may also have some advantages for Turkey?
Well, Erdogan, I think this debate, whether Turkey or Turkey, is not something new. It goes all the way back to Özal period. There was an attempt during the Özal era from 1983 to 1993 to use Turkey more than Turkey because of the word Turkey. But I think it's a trivial discussion and waste of money. It didn't work at that time during the Özal campaign, and it is not going to succeed now either to get people to call Turkey Turkey rather than Turkey. I think this is a useless attempt.
I want to talk about your recent article for the Maple Institute on Erdogan's politics. It is astonishingly critical. I was surprised how tough you were on Erdogan. It was even scathing. You claim that his policy is self-serving and undermining Turkey's national interest. You seem to say that he's conducting his foreign policy essentially to stay in power. That is a very strong indictment of such a popular leader. Can you give us a few examples to show how he's sacrificing Turkey's national interest in pursuit of self-interest?
Well, I think one area, what we are seeing, there is not one Erdogan, there are several Erdogan. when he elected as prime minister in 2002 with the group of people around him, he had very much a pro-European attitude. He made a major constitutional and legal changes to meet the criteria to join the European Union. So I think there was a more democratic, liberal-oriented Erdogan from 2002 until 2013. But in 2013, Erdogan was exposed as a result of major corruption scandal. He and his son talking on the phone, how to hide the money. And then since then, what we are seeing, Erdogan is not really, he doesn't care the national interest or the future of Turkey, what he cares himself. And we see this in the foreign policy domain, especially his relation with Russia, because he moved away from the European Union because European Union insisted on the rule of law, democracy, human rights, and whereas Erdogan doesn't want to have rule of law or democracy, and he doesn't respect the basic human rights as well. And because of this criticism of him, he reoriented Turkish foreign policy toward authoritarian governments and state because of his, again, to protect himself, his own gains and to keep himself in power. And Turkey is this rapprochement with Russia and buying a huge amount of this S-400 missiles. And people are talking about the commission, how much commission he and people around him got from these military deals. So what we are seeing and what we are also hearing, that Erdogan only cares himself, keeping his corrupt system in charge and using foreign policy to consolidate his power, personal power. And I think this attitude to move away from United States and Europe and having closer ties with authoritarian governments in Russia, especially in China. Look at what Chinese are doing against the Muslims in Xinjiang. And Erdogan hasn't said a single word critical of China because what he cares, his own personal interest. He doesn't care the national interest of the country. He doesn't care the rights of Muslims, especially the Uyghurs. He's very outspoken on the Palestinians, I understand, but he never ever said a single critical word about China. The situation of Uyghurs are much worse than what we are seeing in Palestine.
But Hakan, to be fair to Erdogan, in the early years, especially between 2006 and 2012, he was very popular, especially in Europe. He was even declared the European Leader of the Year in 1 year. He democratized Turkey. He tamed the military. He made judiciary independent. And he was highly respected by Western society, Western leaders, and Western intellectuals. He was eager to join European Union. In fact, Erdogan and AKP did more in terms of taking the correct steps necessary to join EU than any previous secular government. But then you had leaders like Sarkozy, who ran for president of France on the promise of excluding Turkey from European Union. So essentially, European Union turning its back on Turkey and excluding Turkey may be just as responsible as any other factor in A, driving Turkey away from the West, and B, also contributing to the rising authoritarianism in Turkey.
Well, I think you have a point. European exclusion, Sarkozy and Merkel, both of them in 2007, they rejected Turkish membership and they said Turkey should have a special relationship with Europe because for Christian Democrat parties in Europe, they do not see Turkey as a European country. They argue that Turkey is culturally, in terms of religion, what they mean Islam, a different country, and Turkey does not fit into Europe. Yet, European leftist parties and social democrats always wanted to define Europe on the basis of human rights and democracy, and they always supported Turkish membership. And I think what we are seeing, Erdogan, really, when he came to power, you are correct. He was very pro-European, but he was not alone. He had Abdullah Gül, Ahmet Davutoğlu, Bülent Arınç, Ali Babacan, a number of very prominent. It was a movement of a group of people, a team. It was not a movement of Erdogan. But Erdogan, just like Stalin, he got rid of all those people around him. He did not kill them, but politically he destroyed them, excluded them, marginalized them. And when he became the only man and the man who controls the entire political machine of Justice and Development Party, we see the real Erdogan, what Erdogan really up to. So we could argue that those reforms between 2002 to 2013 were more or less the reforms led by Ali Babacan, Abdullah Gül, Ahmet Davutoğlu, and group of people around him. When he excluded them, he became the only leader of the party. We see his true face, authoritarian, autocrat. He doesn't care basic human rights. He uses Islam as an instrument to cover up his own corruption. And Turkey today has become one of the most corrupt country, and we have more journalists in jail in Turkey more than even China.
Hakan, from 2012 to 2015 was in a way the glorious era of Turkish academia. There were numerous academic conferences, symposiums. There was a promise of intellectual awakening and revival that was palpable. You could sense it in Turkey. In 1 year, I went to Turkey 3 times in 1 month because they had 3 symposiums and all on Ibn Khaldun. At one of these events in Istanbul, the mayor of Istanbul was introduced. He was welcoming us, and he was introduced as the mayor of Istanbul from AKP. And he corrected the compere and the person who was introducing him and said, I am the mayor of Istanbul. I am Erdogan's mayor of Istanbul. It was meant as a joke, but even then it appeared as if AKP was getting, becoming less prominent, and the aura and the cultish leadership of Erdogan was becoming very, very prominent. Everything else was being sidelined. I mean, do you agree with this assessment?
Muqtedar AKP, or Justice and Development Party, Turkey became a single party system, that it is like a communist system, that the political machine, the Justice and Development Party, controls the entire state institutions. So there is no difference between the political party and the state. And this destroyed the legitimacy of the state as well, that the state today is much weaker. Institutions are not as powerful as they used to be. And you have the personalities rather than institutions. So Erdogan really destroyed the entire state system and the rule of law in the country, which was not perfect before Erdogan. And now we cannot even talk the basic rights and freedoms in the country. 95% of Turkish media controlled by Erdogan and his cronies. And you have these jails are filled either by human rights activists or Kurdish activists, or he personally also targets the Gülen movement. As you know, they were in a political alliance, but now the Gülen movement is also destroyed totally in the country. All the members were put into jail, and the Gülen movement labeled as a terrorist movement, and the properties and the wealth of the members and followers of these movements were also grabbed by the state. So you have a major violation of the property rights, human rights, and there is no rule of law in the country.
But Hakan, would you not agree that the failed coup also played a transformative role in Turkish politics? Maybe it radicalized Erdogan. Erdogan's fear that some forces from the secular domain, from the military, and the Gulenist movement were ready to oust him. This could have frightened him, and a lot of people feel that the failed coup should also be blamed for the political realities of Turkey today, for the radicalization of Erdogan, and in fact, the increased autocratic tendencies of Erdogan really became apparent only after the failed coup. Don't you think so?
Well, I think the coup, yes, you are right. And I wrote my latest book, Erdogan, The Making of an Autocrat. It was published last year. I examined what happened in the coup. Yes, Gulen movement involved in the coup, but Gulen movement in a way induced and provided some opportunities, not the entire movement. Some parts and pieces of the movement were part of the coup. But the coup, what we know so far, on the basis of the intelligence reports from the European countries, the coup is more or less planned by Erdogan and Hulusi Akar. So what we are doing is that the coup itself, the Turkish parliament had established an investigation committee to examine and explore what happened before, during, and after the coup. The entire parliamentary commission was controlled by Justice and Development Party Erdogan. They failed to come up with a report because some of the evidence appeared, it was totally against and undermined Erdogan's narrative about the coup. So the coup is a planned, engineered coup by Erdogan and people around him. Yes, some parts of the Gulen movement also involved in this coup. So we need to do more research to find out really what happened during the coup. Because Erdogan used the coup, as you know, and shifted the entire country from parliamentary system to some kind of presidential system that there is no check and balances. He has more power than even the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire. So what happened, he used the coup to move the entire political system to a new sultanistic type of government that he rules without any checks and balances.
Yes, the shift to the presidential system of government helped concentrate power in the hands of Erdogan and made the system clearly more autocratic. Now, even Imran Khan in Pakistan wants a presidential system. I think he's following in the footsteps of President Erdogan. But given how close and inseparable both AKP and Gulen have been over the years, especially for a long time, any investigation into either of them should find the other equally culpable. Don't you think so? One of the officials of AKP once told me, "We have never said no to them," and he was referring to the Gulen movement. Anyway, let's move
Let's move to foreign policy. Just I want to clarify the difference between Gulen movement and Erdogan. I think if you look at the intellectual origins of the two movements, the Gulen movement very much evolved out of Said Nursi's writing, and the Gulen movement was much more cosmopolitan, pro-European. Education was their main goal. It was very much also market-oriented, but primarily it was driven by a new emerging Anatolian bourgeoisie and pro-European. Whereas Erdogan, what we see is that he's very anti-liberal. He is very much wants to control the economy with the means of the state. He's also very anti-Western at the same time. His mentality is shaped more by Muslim Brotherhood ideology than the type and shape of Turkish Islam, which is rooted in Sufism.
Hakan, today in the capitals of the West, the discussion about Turkey is not very positive. Turkish stock has gone down considerably. People are asking questions: is Turkey a friend? Is Turkey an enemy? Or is Turkey a frenemy? In fact, if you listen to the year-ending discussion on global affairs by the Chicago Council on Global Affairs, whose president is Ivo Dalda, if you look at their conversation, you can find it on YouTube. One of the analysts there said something very interesting. She was suggesting that it's time for NATO to start thinking in terms of how a particular country can be expelled from NATO. Is there a process in place? Are there boxes to check before a country can be expelled from NATO? So the discussion is that Turkey has become a completely unreliable partner when it comes to NATO, and perhaps it's time to think of expelling Turkey. But the rejection of Europe has, in a way, led to Turkey's pivot to the Middle East. So basically, after getting rejected by the West, Turkey turned towards the East, tried to become part of the Middle East, tried to become part and lead the Muslim world. So my question to you is, how is this pivot to the Muslim world working out for Turkey? It appears that Turkey does not have good relations with any of the major Muslim countries in the world.
Yes, you are right. I think you are totally correct. Turkey doesn't have good relation with any major Muslim countries, but Erdogan's relations are best with Putin, and in a way, Turkish energy sector now controlled by Russia, and people are asking question what percentage Erdogan gets from this deal. This is another issue. But I think relation with the United States is bad. Certainly, Erdogan doesn't want better relation with the U.S., but the United States also lost the Turkish public opinion. The U.S. policy in Syria during the Obama period, the U.S. opened support for Kurdish secessionist movement in Syria, and to some extent in Turkey, really, played a very important role to turn Turkish public opinion against the United States. Certainly, Erdogan also helped to create that public opinion. That was also another factor. So anti-Americanism in Turkey is an outcome of this U.S. policy toward the Kurds, but Erdogan also helped to create this anti-Americanism to consolidate somewhat his Islamist domestic base. I think that was another factor. But Erdogan wants to be the leader of Sunni Muslim world, but he doesn't have a good relation with any country because of his arrogant attitude. Also, he wants to personalize rather than institutionalize the relations with some of the leading Muslim countries. Look at Turkey doesn't have ambassador in Egypt. Turkey has very bad relation with many other the countries, the Arab countries in the region. No one wants to interact with Turkey as well. And as you know, in the conflict in Mediterranean Sea around Cyprus, most of the Arab countries, they support Greece. This was not the case before than Turkey. So Turkey is a lonely country, and because Turkey seeks alliance, Russia becomes the only option for Turkey today.
Hakan, the desire for foreign policy autonomy of mid-range powers sometimes is indicative that their foreign policy ambitions far exceed their national capacity and proves counterproductive. For example, Turkey wants autonomy from the US and ends up becoming dependent on Russia. Pakistan ends up becoming a client state of China in pursuit of autonomy from the United States. And I'm not sure if Russia and China are better options than the United States. But I want to explore this re entry of Turkey into the Muslim world a little bit more. In order to become acceptable to the Muslim world, Turkey became more Islamic. In the past few years, the talk of the soft power of Turkey in the Muslim world has received much attention. There is a lot of street credit for Erdogan. Everyone is watching Ertugrul, and even Wahhabis are going crazy about Ibn Arabi. But Turkey's relations with governments of the Muslim countries are not really very good. Is it possible that while Muslim governments may not have good relations with Turkey, Muslim people may still hold Erdogan in high regard? It is possible that he is the only Muslim leader who is regarded as a global Muslim leader by Muslim masses. It is also possible that this image may get tarnished by the current economic crisis of Turkey, and Erdogan's image both at home and overseas might begin to diminish because of this extremely bad instance of governance. I heard that inflation is now above 20% and it may even reach 40% in the year 2022.
Lira lost the value. Turkish economy is in very bad shape now. And so economy is in very, very bad shape because of Erdogan's, again, this idea that interest rates are the cause of inflation in the country. So he, as you know, changed 4 or 5 the president of the central bank, and we have a new guy. And also, he constantly changes the ministers of the economy as well, because he's this. In a way, he gets this idea from the Muslim Brotherhood that the interest rate are not allowed in Islam, and they are the cause of the inflation. In that process, he really destroyed the autonomy and institutional ability of the central bank in Turkey. Today, Turkish economy is in very bad shape. And I think Erdogan's numbers are going down. His public support is very little right now, but Erdogan wants to stay in power. I think the only option he has to keep himself in power is to create a crisis, to polarize Turkish society, even instigate something like a conflict or a civil war to keep himself in power. Or the second option, he might create some external tension and conflict either with Greece or I don't know, some other countries in the Mediterranean, and to justify and rally the public under the flag. I think this is what we are seeing.
Hakan, after 9/11, we were engaged in many debates, and one was about the compatibility of Islam and democracy. Often, AKP was advanced as an example of the compatibility of Islam and democracy. After the Arab Spring, Erdogan went on a victory tour, presenting AKP as a model of Islamic governance, as democratic, etc., until basically Rashid Ghannouchi of Tunisia told him to stay at home and that Turkish model was not replicable in the Arab world. AKP was proof that, and not Erdogan, that Islam was compatible with democracy. But now we see a fragmentation of AKP. You have Ali Babajan, who has his own party, Ahmed Davutoglu, who was, in my view, one of the intellectuals of AKP, has his own party. So does this mean that Islam and democracy experiment in Turkey is over?
We are seeing Muqtedar so far, I think. The Islamic movements were democratic when they were in opposition. When they come to power, we see a different kind of movement. So Islamists are very good in challenging authoritarian systems, and they did open spaces for marginal voices in many Arab countries, including in Turkey. But when they come to power, we see another phase. They become much worse than secular authoritarian parties. So I have a different conclusion today. I don't think what my conclusion after seeing this experiment in Turkey, secularism is a sine qua non. Secularism is necessary to have a democracy. We have seen in Egypt, in many other Arab countries as well, when Islamists they come to power, we see a totally different face.
Hakan, the latest issue of Foreign Affairs, has an interesting essay by Sonur Cagaptay that discusses the end game for Erdogan. He discusses various options for Erdogan's exit from power. And he argues that Erdogan's popularity has diminished significantly and he could potentially lose the 2023 elections. The polls at the moment suggest that if his opponents were to run against him, and if it was one-on-one, then it's quite possible that Erdogan would lose the 2023 presidential elections. But Cagaptay argues that if he lost the elections, he would create a constitutional crisis to stay in power rather than give power up. He would basically pull a Trump and declare the elections as unfair. We saw him do this already in 2019 with the mayoral elections, where he kept refusing and acknowledging and accepting the electoral outcome. And so when they had elections again, AKP was defeated with greater margins. So basically, the citizens of Istanbul emphasized their rejection of AKP at the time. So what do you think of this possibility that Erdogan will create a constitutional crisis?
Well, I read the article by Soner Cagaptay. I think it is an interesting article, but I disagreed with some of the conclusion. I think he is correct that Erdogan is not going to leave the office, and I don't think Erdogan may not even have an election. Election supposed to take place in 2023, but if he sees that he may not win, he's more likely to create crisis either inside the country or outside the country. I think this is a very likely situation. Second, if there is an election, he doesn't give up the office. So the article suggested that there should be an exit strategy for Erdogan, that the military should give him guarantees that no one will touch him and his children and his wealth as well. I don't think that's not going to happen. And Erdogan knows that as well, because this is the same man, Erdogan. He took 90 years old generals to the jail, and they are in jail right now. Some of them have very bad health situation. So Erdogan, he knows that the moment he leaves the office, there will be a court and people, because he persecuted so many innocent people. He polarized the country. He destroyed the economy. So he knows what he's going to face. And this, I don't think this exit strategy for Erdogan, that the military to become arbitrator in a way, to provide some exit for Erdogan is not going to work, because that kind of neutral military is not there anymore. Today, Turkish military is totally controlled by Erdogan. Turkish police force is controlled by him. There is no institutional autonomy in the country, including constitutional court. All the judges are appointed by him.
What do you think of Cagaptay's idea of a grand bargain with Erdogan, in which the opposition negotiates with him some kind of a pathway in which he and his family and possibly his resources and wealth is allowed to escape without creating a political crisis in Turkey?
I think so. I don't see that happening, because we are not talking only Erdogan and his family. He created an establishment of the cronies around him. And I don't think they are not going to give up the power. They will resist. They control the military, they control the police force. I am not optimistic about the future of Turkey in terms of peaceful transition of power. I think Erdogan will not go away, and opposition is not unified in regard to providing him a secure exit either, because people want justice. I think they deserve justice as well. And in that sense, I think the issue here, um, uh, Turkey will have difficult days ahead.
This is depressing me, Hakan. Let's talk about something positive. You know, the first time I went to Turkey was in 2008 for a conference on Islam and democracy. I stayed in this fancy hotel called the Conrad Hotel. It was very expensive. So after the conference, I wanted to stay a couple more weeks, and so I moved to Ikim in Uskudar and stayed there for nearly a month. Actually, gave a few lectures and made lots of friends. A friend of mine, I'm not going to name him, took me for breakfast often to the little downtown in Uskudar, and the Turkish breakfasts are fabulous. And in these nice restaurants, so I met so many scholars because there are a couple of universities there. And my friend would constantly introduce me and say, "Oh, this is Mehmet. He studies Ibn Arabi. Oh, this is Mehmet. He writes about Rumi. Oh, this is Mehmet. He just finished a book on Farabi." And so on and so forth. I'd never heard that in any other parts of the Muslim world. So just meeting these scholars, spending hours debating with them about Islamic philosophy and Islamic mysticism, I had the feeling that I had died and gone to heaven. But unfortunately, today there are no major conferences, there are no symposium. Turkish academia appears to be devastated. In the wake of the coup, it appears that someone took a demolition ball and destroyed the intellectual environment of Turkey. I feel very sad. What do you think, Hakan?
Erdogan, Erdogan, in a way, destroyed it as well. He closed, for instance, Şehir University
Yeah.
used to be one of the best universities in Istanbul. He closed it because political reasons again. And Erdogan doesn't.
Fateh also, right?
Yes, Fatih University, a number of other universities in Anatolia as well. He closed a number of institutions as well. He doesn't want critical thinking. He wants yes man around him. And he's very uncomfortable with educated people. So he likes to give order around and never to be criticized. I think he doesn't like any type of criticism. So Turkish universities today, what it was in early 2000, if you compare today, they are in very bad shape. Most of the professors were also fired as well because they were either accused of being pro-Kurdish or pro-Gulenist. And the country is in decline, unfortunately. Civility, this is the most important aspect. The civility in society is also destroyed because of polarizing policies of Erdogan. And I think, unfortunately, in some Muslim countries, Erdogan has still very positive image. I think people are not aware what happened to Turkey.
The issue probably going forward is transition of power. Like, how do we go from here? We are living in a post-AKP Turkey. How do we go to a post-Erdogan Turkey? That is the challenge, right? But what kind of scenarios do you see? What kind of?
I really, nothing positive. I think post-Erdogan transition is not going to be that peaceful. That's all I can say. But I don't know the nature of violence. I don't know the role of some of the security establishment, especially the role of Turkish military. But so far, Erdogan destroyed the institutions and rule of law in the country. And we don't know really what is going to happen, how this transition to post-Erdogan period is the biggest issue and biggest debate now in the country. But some people are saying first we need to find an opposition leader and rally around him, and then to think what to do the next. But I think you are totally correct that if Erdogan doesn't agree with the election results, then what? What would you do? I think that's the biggest challenge right now. And I don't see any hopeful and peaceful scenario there.
Hakan, it's been wonderful talking to you.
Well, thank you. Thanks again
Thank
for
you
your
very much.
But
I hope we will have another conversation in a few more months.
I hope so.
And I hope you are wrong. I pray that you are
I hope
wrong.
so too. I hope so.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Hakan Yavuz, for talking to me, for being on Khanversations. You have enlightened us. You have given us the advantage of your years of scholarship on Turkey and discuss various scenarios about where Turkey is going in the near and long future. I thank all the listeners of Khanversations and followers of Khanversations for watching this show. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel if you have not already done so, and also share this with your friends and your network. And thank you very much.